Test, 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 test. All right, good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of the Governing Board of Montgomery County Educational Service Center, I would like to welcome you to the Montgomery County ESC. I am joined today by my fellow Montgomery County Public School Superintendents or their designees, both to my left and to my right, in an effort to show our unified disagreement with the current EdChoice program recently enacted by our state legislators. Today's press conference will be brief. The language that exists currently will have devastating effects for public schools. The day public school administrators must take on the role of being legislative language watchdogs is a sad day in education, and specifically a sad day for the children that they serve. Unfortunately, that is where we are and is our current state of affairs. Since there has already been statewide and local media press coverage around the EdChoice changes, we will jump directly into specific comments around the effects EdChoice will have as it is positioned today on our public school districts here in Montgomery County. Currently, 12 of our 16 public school districts in Montgomery County have buildings on the EdChoice eligibility list. However, all 16 district leaders are keenly aware that they run the risk of having buildings on the list given the current criteria. The amount of money each district is projected to lose over the next 4 years differs greatly by each school district. However, across the county, projections show that tens of millions of public education state aid dollars will potentially be diverted away from our public schools each year. Our speakers today who will offer their remarks will be Rob O'Leary, Superintendent at Vandalia Butler Schools, Dave Mellon, our Regional President, PNC Bank, and Elizabeth Lawley, the Superintendent of the Dayton Public Schools. I will then make closing comments to round out our time together, and at this time, I would invite Mr. O'Leary to the podium.
Good afternoon. My name is Rob O'Leary, and I'm the Superintendent of the Vandalia Butler City School District. Vandalia Butler is just one of 605 traditional school districts in the state of Ohio. We all have different stories to tell, and I'm here today to tell ours. The story of funding lost. 474 of Ohio's 605 school districts, at 78%, receive all or more of their formula funding from the state. Meanwhile, there are 131 districts, or 22%, that receive around $435 million less than their formula aid. Vandalia Butler is one of those 131, or 22% of the school districts who receive less than their formula aid. The Vandalia Butler City School District is capped in state funding at 80% of the applied funding formula. Further, we receive less than 50% ADM funding, causing additional disparity and loss of revenue. The state has a funding problem. It cannot even follow its own funding formula. Last year, we learned that the Vandalia Butler City School District is listed as one of the top 50 schools, unfortunately ranked by the amount of state aid lost. It takes being included as a top 50 school in this category to fully put our situation of being shortchanged in school funding into perspective. Districts like ours are not getting their share of the funding model, which puts additional burden on our taxpayers in the community. The recent legislative changes in the EdChoice program look to further compound our issues with state funding. Several legislative changes over the past 5 years to the EdChoice program have led to an over-identification of school buildings for the 2020-2021 school year across the state. These legislative changes have resulted in an expansion of scholarship applicants at the high school level beyond what the original intention of the EdChoice program, which was to provide resident district students attending underperforming buildings the option to apply for a scholarship, not for students who never attended a resident district school to be eligible. We have 2 buildings in Vandalia Butler on the EdChoice list, even though both buildings have overall C ratings on the state report card. They're not failing. The legislation has attached money to performance on a broken and flawed testing and accountability system. Because I'm limited in time to speak, I will not go off on a tangent and rant about the state accountability and report card system. However, how the performance levels are calculated, etc. But let the record show it is a big part of the problem and needs fixing as well. Back to my point. Because Vandalia Butler City Schools state funding is already capped, the decrease in funds by the amount of the vouchers provided to such families and students who have not attended our schools and others who transfer to private or parochial schools will jeopardize the district's finances, stability, and the quality of education for our students. These vouchers will be calculated and paid to the families at the full per student ADM rate, even though Vandalia Butler City Schools, as I said earlier, only receives 50% of the per student ADM. So a student who attends Vandalia Butler City Schools is funded at half of what they should be at the per student ADM, while a student who receives a voucher will carry the full freight with them. And again, our buildings are not failing. This does not make sense, it's not fair, and I can't explain it to our community. For 25 years, the state of Ohio's funding system has been deemed unconstitutional. The state of Ohio has the constitutional responsibility to secure a thorough and efficient system of schools. The EdChoice expansion does not solve this problem, it compounds it. We all realize and understand that the legislative process is imperfect. Oftentimes, legislation is created and passed that results in unintended consequences when implemented. This requires legislators to make changes once these unintended consequences and impacts are revealed. We understand that the legislators are aware of the need for a legislative fix, and we put our faith and trust in you that you will fix this problem. Thank you.
Mr. Mellon.
Good afternoon, I'm Dave Mellon, Regional President for PNC Bank, and I was asked to just give a couple of comments as it relates to the business community and what this means. About a year ago, I gave a TED Talk on the need to make a fundamental shift in how we invest in education and the importance of investing in high-quality early learning. As a community, we need to create greater access to high-quality learning. And that access needs to be across our entire school system from K through 12. The number one issue I hear from business owners at almost every meeting is talent. They can't hire enough people to support growth, as the individuals that are applying simply don't have the technical or social-emotional skills necessary to do the work. Public schools are the backbone of all communities in the Miami Valley, and businesses rely on those schools to provide the next generation of skilled workers. This preparation starts in preschool and goes all the way through 12th grade and beyond. In Dayton and Montgomery County, businesses continue to work hard and hand in hand with educators to support high quality education in a variety of ways. At PNC, I can speak to our early childhood education initiatives through programs such as Preschool Promise, because it is proven that children who have a high quality preschool education are better prepared for success in school and life. As business leaders, we need to make sure our schools, teachers, educators, and parents have the necessary resources to ensure all students have access to high quality learning. We also need to ensure the standards of accessing high quality is proven and is consistent in how we measure quality. We appreciate the dedication of our local educators and parents who are laying the foundation for the economic growth of our region.
Thank you. Dr. Lawley.
Thank you. I am Elizabeth Lawley, and good afternoon to all of you. Since the 2011-2012 school year, EdChoice scholarships have been draining Ohio public schools of much needed resources. While these scholarships first affected the lowest performing schools within a school district, the new guidelines allow that even high performing schools within a district will be eligible. Public education is exactly that, for the public. not the select public, but for the entire public. Public or common schools emerged over 150 years ago because our country's leaders understood that such schools were imperative to fulfilling the common good. Quite simply, public schools would make our communities stronger. EdChoice, as it is currently being expanded, has the potential to significantly compromise the original promise of public schools. With EdChoice, private options are paid for with public tax money. This is a problem. First, as you all know, private schools can choose which students to educate. Public schools cannot make that choice. Second, private schools do not have to be accountable through state-issued report card results. Public schools have clear mandates regarding accountability, and they must make public how their students perform relative to outcomes such as reading and math proficiency. If EdChoice is going to be expanded by the state of Ohio, then every school that receives a student's voucher should be subject to the same accountability requirements that bind our Dayton Public Schools or any public school in Montgomery County. That is, quite simply, good public policy. Hold every school accountable in the same way so that every parent can make an informed choice. In essence, why is it acceptable to allow public tax dollars to be spent on a private education when private schools are not held accountable to the same standards as public schools in Ohio? Anyone receiving public dollars should have to be transparent about how well their students perform. Private education is a choice, not a right. Public education is a right granted to all students and families. To drain the Dayton Public School District of over $57 million over the past several years, and potentially even more with these new EdChoice eligibility rules, is unacceptable. Public schools are the backbone of America. The damage that has been done to public schools so far through EdChoice, most of which are in urban areas, cannot continue. Another 700 public schools across Ohio will now suffer a devastating reduction of funds if this new requirement is not changed. Again, how and why is it acceptable to fund private education at the expense of the public, especially when private schools providers are not held accountable in the same way? Thank you.
I would like to again thank our three speakers for their remarks. I would like to also note that each district representative who stands up here with me today could equally give their own remarks specific about their own district and their own community. We are not asking for a quick fix. Not on the language, not on the policy. And an income-only based structure for EdChoice is also not the answer. We are hopeful our legislators will do exactly what they expect us to do when we encounter a systems problem that creates unintended consequences, is created by other fallible policy, or is quite simply bad policy. We are asking that a thorough and systematic approach be taken to address the true issues at hand. Our district leaders want, and our communities should expect, that any school receiving public funds, regardless of zip code, should be held accountable in a just and equitable way. Public education is the foundational component of educational choice and must remain a viable option for all of our students, because our public schools are still responsible for educating all of our students. Thank you again for coming today. While we will not be taking questions at this time as a whole, there are district leaders who are available for further interviewing. And this concludes our time together. Thank you very much.